You're tuning in to WellFound's Ask a Recruiter, where we sit down with recruiters to share their advice on the hiring process. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. I'm from the Product Education and Community team here at WellFound. I'm really excited to have these three wonderful professionals with us today. They've been previous Ask a Recruiter guests before, so I know this is going to be great, but it's very cool to have them all together and to meet each other. Today's topic is about recruiting operations, what works and what doesn't. So we're going to talk a little bit of skill sharing, the tools and operations that Gloria Dallas, Brandon Jeffs, and Arielle Salman-Bailey have been using in their recruiting practices. I'm going to introduce them formally in just a minute, but while people roll in, I'm going to just sort of talk a little bit about how the session is going to work today. So today is a pure Q&A session. It's geared towards recruiters, but if there's job seekers on the call, that's totally fine. But the questions will be about recruiting. We're starting with questions from our intake survey. So these are questions from you, and I'll announce who they're from. Before I introduce our guests, I just want to announce that this is presented by WellFound. We specialize in getting you hired by startups and helping people hire for startups. We've made over 8 million matches. We have over 150,000 tech jobs and 25,000 startups in our system. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what new tools we have, but I'll keep it brief. We're just going to use the session today to talk about what's been working for our guests with their operations. Okay, down to the good stuff. Brandon Jeffs is our first guest. He turned down Google to build startups and transform recruiting. He's the former director of people and talent at TLDR, which had over 6 million subscribers. He combines executive search expertise with content creation and employer branding, and he's currently building the Talent Machine, which I'm really excited to hear more about. Gloria Davis is also joining us. She has over 10 years of experience across technical and non-technical roles. She co-founded Envision Inclusion and also leads recruiting at the startup Snappr. And then Arielle Salman-Bailey is currently a strategic talent sourcer at Warner Bros. Discovery. She has experience with tech companies, including Chainlink Labs and Cohere, and she specializes in data-driven talent mapping and executive-level pipeline building. So I'm really excited to have all three of you here with us today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Excited to be here.
Stoked to be here.
Okay, so our first question is about tools and methods. So for each of you, maybe you can each speak to this. What new tools and methods are successful in the current recruiting environment and which have not worked so well? So what have you been avoiding and what have you been navigating towards?
Well, I can jump in first. I think from a sourcing perspective, it's always changing, right? Like depending on the job market and the environment and what roles you're working on and how difficult it is to find candidates for the role. I think you always have to pivot, just know your audience, right? I think we'll dive into this in a little bit, but AI for sure has been a new tool in the last year that I've really been honing in on. So I'm excited to talk about that. And what has not worked well? I mean, just in the industries that I've been in, cold calling is not it, but I know that that works for, more like operational jobs and things like that, but that's just speaking to, what it is that I do in my experience.
For me, a tool that I've been using literally since I started recruiting. So like have been using for 12 years now. LinkedIn is kind of evergreen. It's not always my favorite tool to use, and it is extremely expensive right now, but it is also where a majority of candidates have profiles and are a little bit accessible. Response rates tend to be pretty high there. So I am still frequently using LinkedIn. I've been using some new AI sourcing tools like Juicebox AI, Endorsed AI, does not just sourcing, but also resume reviews and application reviews. I have used tools like Contact Out and Seek Out, not just for sourcing, but for finding contact information for candidates if we're trying to do email campaigns as well. I have, when it comes to applicant tracking systems, I think Ashby is kind of the gold standard right now for an applicant tracking system that is also going to, do a lot of data, track a lot of your data and your metrics. My company uses Lever, so I'm also using Talent Wall to kind of pull a lot of the data that I need. And so, yeah, there's definitely more, but I'm kind of blinking on them. But these are kind of the main tools that I've been using lately.
Awesome. I'm not going to give one specific tool, but when I think about using artificial intelligence for recruiting right now, what is AI and what are LLMs really good at? Words. What's a great way to get words? Interview transcription. Love having interview transcription, especially in the post-recruiter handoff, because it allows visibility and mutual accountability for what happens after recruiters hand off a candidate. For far too long, we've been obsessed with this idea of white glove service. How do we know if hiring managers are accountable to the interview plan and asking the questions that we talked about in the kickoff? Interview transcription. So I'm super stoked on that. Gloria, also love that you mentioned some contemporary tools. I'm actually a contact out nerd myself. There was a former employee that before they left gave me like an unlimited number of credits. So don't tell anybody I contact out. But for example, what was not on my Monday morning bingo card was texting with Alex from the Chain Smokers. And I got his phone number because of contact out. So yeah, I'll cold call anybody.
Oh, amazing. I love that detail. Okay, well, we can keep moving forward. We're gonna have, I'm sure, more questions about tools as we keep on addressing these. So, bad actors. This one I'm super curious to hear about. How do you detect and avoid AI-enabled bad actors in the hiring process? And maybe you've got some stories you can share about that on your end too.
Yeah, I can go with this one. This is really hard nowadays, especially since so many of us are using different screens. Like I personally, when I'm doing a recruiter screen, I'm very focused on you, but I also have your resume over here and the notes that I'm taking over here. So I'm looking back and forth. And I think candidates are often, they have their resume pulled up. They might have their notes. They might be taking notes. And so it can be hard just looking at someone and seeing that they're reading and thinking, oh, they're reading off of ChatGPT. That said, sometimes it is really easy to tell when someone is just reading a response, when they're just looking and it is just like very much a reading a very canned response and it doesn't have a lot of nuance to it. It doesn't have a lot of specifics to it. It just feels very, very generic. That can often be a sign that they are using ChatGPT. We have personally caught a few people doing some AI enabled bad acting a couple of times. We had a candidate doing a live coding session who actually got caught copying and pasting everything from the AI tool that they were using. They got caught asking the AI tool the question, copying and pasting it and moving it onto the screen. And that was something that the interviewer just had to call out and like, I can see everything you're doing. Like, I can see everything that's happening on your screen right now. So that has happened. I have had an interviewer that realized that the person that she was interviewing with, this is not AI, but she was interviewing with a different person from the person she'd reached out to. And she noticed that just because there were differences in their pictures, she noticed that he kept on forgetting his supposed name and kind of referring to himself a little bit differently. Didn't know a lot of details about where he had supposedly worked before. And so that there's definitely stuff like that. One thing that we have done to kind of implement some changes around this is trying to be a little bit more transparent. So I send out emails to candidates letting them know like, hey, sometimes we're actually very okay with you using AI in the interview. For the most part, this is going to be a conversation. So we would usually prefer that you don't use AI, but we are open to it sometimes. So if we do explicitly ask you to look something up in ChatGPT, if we do explicitly ask you, if you're using a certain type of tool and if you'd like to use that in the interview process, that's completely fine and we're okay with that. But we would, if we notice you using an AI tool and we didn't explicitly say that we would like you to use it in that moment, that is going to be a red flag for us. And so I think being a little bit more transparent about that and saying like, hey, we use AI too. We're okay with you using AI as long as we're all open and honest about that, has kind of reduced the amount of covert AI stuff that we've been seeing.
Oh man, so I'll jump in there.
Yeah, please go.
Ahead. Okay.
No,
Well,
go.
just jumping off of Gloria, I have similar experiences just with sort of that name situation and the person acting as somebody else. We've had people interview virtually, but they'll use a filter that is somebody else's face. And I mean, with deepfakes and stuff, it's really convincing. And then this person shows up to the office because we're on a hybrid model, and surprise, they're not who they said they were. So it's definitely happening. I think that we're definitely honing in on, how can we mitigate that problem. But in the overall, like from my standpoint, right, as a sourcer, I'm sort of like first line of defense. When I'm screening my candidates, I like to ask situational questions that are really specific to their background and their resume in relation to the role. That way, even if they were using AI, I mean, I could tell, if they're using a note transcriber to type in the question really quick into Chat GPT, there's going to be like a weird lull, or, I think you just use human discernment, and I feel like you can tell. Maybe it will get worse, I don't know, but in this moment, I don't think people are too savvy. But again, like, I'm first line of defense, and then it goes to my recruiter, and then it goes to the hiring managers, and then you're going to have to end up in office. So at some point, it's just like you're going to get caught, and it just is what it is. And unfortunately, we were talking about this before we kicked off this call, but the bad egg is going to make all of us go back in office. So stop doing that if anybody's doing it.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting. The one that comes to mind for me when I detected, I think my first fraudulent candidate, there was just a glitch, and it was like an auto play Zoom video where the audio wasn't syncing with the video. And that happens sometimes with the internet, but there was like one glitch on a pixel. Um, but when I think about the role of recruiting operations and systems to detect and avoid AI-enabled bad actors, it's really up to recruiters to lean on the vendors and ask challenging questions around how they're mitigating risk, being well-informed about the use of AEDTs and automated decision systems. New York City has local law 144. The California law just signed and goes into effect on October 1st. Illinois and Colorado have laws that are going into effect around the automated decision-making process. So how do we detect and avoid? We use tools and systems that are compliant and mitigating that risk on our behalf. At the end of the day, we're just recruiters. We're optimizing a process. So yeah, ask hard questions of your vendors and make sure that your appetite for risk is aligned with the business and the client that you're serving. Somebody said in the chat, fly them in for the day. Yeah, totally. I'm seeing that, like flying folks in. And then there's another idea of clean rooms. We're going to see like clean room interviewing, clean room testing facilities like in your city where you just go in, leave your phone, leave your laptop, use like a testing administered site. So I think we could see that for job interviews too.
Wow, clean room. That sounds like something from the FBI or something very cool. Okay, well, great, very entertaining stories on that one. So we have, for the next question, is all about AI automation, and they're kind of two similar questions from Sierra and Adriana, but I'm going to ask both. So Sierra asks, how can we leverage AI without replacing recruiters or losing the human element? And then sort of it paired nicely with this question, Adriana asks, what portion of your job have you already automated, and where do you still have the need for human judgment? So maybe that's how it comes into practice.
I can go with this. So things that I am currently using that I've automated, note taking, like Brandon was saying, I have AI note takers. I do have an AI tool that is doing the initial resume review for me. I still need to review resumes and applications after they come in, but it's kind of ranking them for me to start with. I am sometimes using AI to help like refine job descriptions or help with some messaging sequencing. And then I'm using some AI sourcing tools as well, where I can get really, really specific and detailed about the type of candidate I'm looking for and the backgrounds that they're coming from. Some of this is really, really helpful. Like AI tends to know, for example, that AI knows about more startups than I do. I don't know like every single startup that exists. And so if I'm looking for someone that is coming from like a B2B SaaS startup, AI can usually say like, hey, these people all have that background that you're looking for. And that's really exciting. AI is not smart enough to be able to take over the entire job for you at any of these points. I was just telling my husband the other day about a issue I had with an AI note taker where, it was recording all the notes for the conversation. I went back and looked at a very critical question, and the AI gave a completely opposite answer of what the candidate gave. Like the AI just lied about what the candidate said, and it was a very blatant, completely out there lie. And then I asked the AI why it said that, and it didn't have a response. It wasn't like it misheard it. Like the AI just completely fabricated what that candidate said. Similarly, when it comes to like the AI application review or AI sourcing, AI a lot of times gets really, really confused about certain types of jobs. I will say I need someone that has, 10 years of product management experience. And sometimes AI is really good at pulling that up for me. Sometimes it has no idea what I'm talking about. It's like, this person has a lot of project management experience and program management experience. But when I say I need like specific product managers who've worked in a technical space, it sometimes doesn't understand what I'm talking about. And I've had to argue with AI back and forth about a few things. So I feel like I'm always still having to review the notes that have been taken. I'm still having to review the applications that come in because sometimes AI ranks applicants that are really, really talented way too low, or gives a really high ranking to candidates that are absolutely not a fit. I'm still doing like a lot of the manual sourcing input because a lot of the filters that AI will use will actually like cut out a lot of people that would be a fantastic fit, and AI doesn't fully understand the filters that I'm using. So I like it as a starting point, and I really like it as something that is like keeping track of a lot of my data. But it is not something that I can just like let it do everything on its own and then, it'll be successful. When it comes to AI replacing humans, that is also not something I'm worried about at all. I think we're going to get to a point where we have ATSs, for example, that are not only taking notes for you, but they're also like helping move candidates through the process. They're helping automate scheduling. They're doing a lot of this, and I think it's going to be amazing when we get to that point. But at that point, I think we'll have humans that will just be very people forward, maybe not doing as much data tracking as we tend to do in our jobs right now, which will open up the recruiting field to a lot of people who are, bigger personalities, who are really, really engaging with candidates, who are really, really good at convincing a candidate to leave like their fancy big company to come and work at a startup, like just really, really engaging people who are maybe just not as good as tracking their data, or maybe not as detail oriented when it comes to, moving from this stage to this stage, or all of the little things that we have to do. I think it's going to be the same thing with sales. I think that we're going to end up having a lot of CRMs that will track everything that is happening in a sales pipeline. And then the people that we hire for sales will just be able to be big personalities all the time and won't have to worry as much about the data collection and as much about like, the logistics of everything that they're doing. So we're not anywhere near close to that point, but I do think that that's kind of what the future of AI is going to be in the recruiting space.
Yeah, and my thoughts right now, there's a need for a human in the loop. So for the foreseeable future, someone's going to have to press play on some sort of automation. Someone's going to have to communicate with an agentic co-pilot. We don't have solutions yet that have completely automated without a human in the loop. So there's no rule that says like hiring managers can't run their own process. I know plenty of hiring managers that have worked with them for the last decade that run their own process, jump into the ATS, source their candidates. So nothing new there. When I think about not losing the human element, there's a lot of folks out there that have the job title or have held the job title recruiter. Recruiting is a business process first and a job title second. So if you don't want to be replaced, then you should really care. Get really good at recruiting. Get really good at communicating strategically with hiring managers. Yeah, there's a culling in our industry, and there's a lot of folks that have been laid off that are going to have to pivot. But at the end of the day, it's just like a supply and demand and cost of labor thing. What does it cost to process applications and hire somebody? So I'm optimistic for the future for folks that really care, who will differentiate themselves. And part of that is bringing the art of a placement, the art of advising a hiring manager to the process. From a rec ops perspective, procuring AI solutions after breaking down the candidate funnel. Run your data glean insights, then go to market. Don't just start looking at vendor demos because your CHRO said it's time to do the AI. If you can work with your rec ops team, maybe you're running rec ops yourself, look at your funnel, identify the friction points, talk to your counterparts in other companies, establish new benchmarks. This stuff is moving super fast. So when I think about the portion of my job that I've already automated, there's a lot of great tooling out there. I'm not going to plug any specific tooling today outside of Wellfound, but ask really hard questions that are rooted in compliance with your vendors. So that compliance, again, is back to legislation. And particularly as we see the spam cannon effect, where it's not 50, 500 folks, but 5,000 people applying to a job in one rec in 1 month, there's naturally going to be a need for getting that short list. And one question you can ask of your vendors is, how do you rank those candidates? And they should be telling you that there is like a good, better, best formula, not a numerical stack rank. If they're telling you there's a numerical stack rank, that is not going to fly with legislation for automated decision systems, and you could be putting your company at risk. So a green flag to look at is that good, better, best ranking of candidates. And then I think the last thing I'll say is, like, I'm excited about this. Why? I'm a recruiter. I'm a human being. I drink coffee and I talk to candidates all day, and I do a little bit of internet sleuthing. How cool is that? When I think about my schedule, I can run 10 really good interviews a day. I can do 15, but those last 5 at the end of the day, I'm really not my best listener. And recruiting is all about listening. So I'm excited about agentic AI at the top of funnel, because for the first time, we can have more candidates earning interviews. And that's an infinite number. So of those 5,000 folks in a rec, agentic AI in the next couple of years could be giving everybody a shot to talk about their skills and qualifications for 45 minutes. And we should be excited about that.
Oh, I love that. You guys made some really good points, Brandon and Gloria. So again, to piggyback on both of them, how am I leveraging AI right now? I use it in so many ways to automate my process, especially as somebody who's looking at candidates from the passive perspective. So I like to join my kickoff calls with my recruiters and my hiring managers, and I'll come in prepared, right? Like I come in with a set of questions that maybe I've used AI to dissect the job description, so I can ask my hiring managers really thoughtful questions and make sure I'm really understanding that role. So they know that, hey, I'm serious about this and I do want to help. Maybe I'm using AI at that same time to compare the resume to the job description. So I'll do a little pre-sourcing. I'll find maybe 2 or 3 really good resumes that I think match, make sure that it's a fit up against the job description, and then I'll present it to my hiring managers and say, okay, I hear what you're saying. Do these people look like what you're looking for? On the side of hiring managers and presenting to them, data organization. So if I'm somebody who's presenting any sort of statistic or data or insights to my hiring managers around the market and what candidates look like for this particular role, I'll often use AI to do some data organization to make sure it's, it makes sense in my brain, but doesn't make sense on paper for me to present on a deck or however it is for my hiring managers and my recruiters. I also use it to just write my Boolean strings. It's 10 times easier and so much faster with all the ands and ors. And I mean, a Boolean string, a good one could take me 15 minutes to write thoughtfully, and then I have to adjust and then fix it and so on and so forth. With AI, I can just get it in like 30 seconds and adjust it if I need to, make it more broad or make it more niche. And I do the same thing for x-ray strings also. I'm old school in that way with my x-rays. I feel like nobody does x-ray searches anymore, but I still do. Sometimes if we're having a really tough time finding candidates or getting them through, first round, second rounds, third rounds, so on and so forth, I'll use AI to help write a hiring strategy. So just kind of telling them telling the AI the situation, what's been going on, and then having the AI dissect sort of problem solving and how we can make a strategy around speeding up the hiring process or getting people through the funnel a lot quicker. I feel like I use it for so many things. Drip campaigns. I think Gloria sort of touched on this, but just message sequencing. You're never going to reach out to a candidate one time. If you do, that's great. But I think the statistic is like 6 times is really the sweet spot, which is insane. I don't want to write all those messages. So I'm going to use AI to say, write me a 6-part campaign based on X, Y, and Z, and then I'll tailor it to the candidate where it needs to be tailored. Again, I'm coming from a passive perspective, so I really like to really hone in on the candidate specifically, since I'm not doing a high volume outreach. But I'll give the AI the chance to give me the base of those 6 messages and then go from there. So that automates my process really quickly. LinkedIn posts, I want to sound articulate and exciting, so I'll make AI do that for me, and it's done in like 5 seconds. Screening questions, maybe sometimes I'm not digesting the entire job description in the way that I need to. So if I plug in the job description and say, give me 4 really specific screening questions, situational questions that I can ask candidates, my hiring managers love that. I sound so technical and excited about the role, like I work in this department. So if I give them those answers, more times I'll get my candidates through because I'm being thoughtful about how I'm presenting them and the information that I'm passing on. And yeah, in the overall, I still see the need for human judgment. Absolutely. I agree with Brandon and Gloria in that I don't think that AI can take over our entire job function. At the end of the day, even if you work at if you work at a tech company, a creative company, wherever you work, people want to feel warm and they want to feel welcomed. And I still have to be here 40 hours a week. I want to know that the people that I'm working with are still people and not robots. And I think that really goes a long way. Being thoughtful with how you connect with candidates, that's like the best part of the job. So I don't think we are going anywhere. Yeah, nobody wants to talk to a box for sure. I just saw that in the chat.
Sorry about that. The train was going by, so I was on mute. Those were really great answers. And it's really interesting to hear just like the vastness of all the different ways in which you're utilizing AI, but also how manual your use of AI still sounds too, and how it's not all happening in one place yet. So I'm really interested to see how things continue to grow with the tools that are available for recruiters and how I'll react to them. But I love that resounding call for still human warmth. I believe in that, so it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so the next question that we have is about filtering candidates. And this actually, I saw that John had a question about like how to take, how to shortlist 5,000 candidates and what methods you all use for that. So it's kind of related to this. So what have you used in the past to filter out candidates efficiently, and what actually worked versus what didn't? And this question's from Eric.
It's a tough one. I have to really think about it. To filter candidates efficiently, I mean, I just mentioned this, but definitely Boolean and X-ray strings. I mean, definitely Boolean. I think that will pull out a lot of people in the pool. And sometimes the Boolean string will bring it from 5,000 if you're just doing a title search down to like 20. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. I gotta redo this because I need at least 100 candidates to sift through. So I don't think that there's any like magic or secret sauce to it. I think Boolean strings are it. And then what worked versus what didn't, what hasn't worked in the past. I don't know. I have to think about that. If Gloria and Brandon want to visit this, and then maybe I'll have something to say after that.
Gloria, go for it.
Yeah. So for me, yes, Boolean search strings really help narrow down like the candidates at the top of the funnel, which I think is really, really great. Again, some of these AI tools like Juicebox, or I'm blanking on another one right now, but they can also help with kind of narrowing endorsed AI. They can also help kind of with narrowing down to the type of candidate profile that you're looking for, which I think can be really, really helpful, especially if you get really, really specific. Like I need someone that graduated with this type of degree, that comes from an early stage startup background, that has worked in computer vision or whatever it is that you're looking for. I think AI can tend to be really AI sourcing tools can be really helpful with that, as well as Boolean search strings. I have also, with not necessarily filtering, but being like really intentional, doing a deep dive on specific companies that are doing this really, really well. So if I realize that, I am looking for someone that has, experience in the computer vision space, and I'll see like how many companies are focusing on computer vision in San Francisco right now. I'll make a list of those companies, and then I'll do a search that is like specifically looking for candidates with like X number of years of experience, these three types of job titles, kind of narrow it down that way. And then that usually ends up giving really, really good results. When it comes to filtering candidates a little bit later in the process, there are so many things that work and do not work. One thing that tends to not work well from what I've seen is like really, really bloated interview processes. If you are having like 15 people interview the candidate throughout the process, you're not going to get a good read, unfortunately, on the candidate. I think a lot of people think that the more filters you have throughout the process, the more likely it is that you're going to get a good hire out of it. And I don't think that's true. I think a shorter process that is more practical is usually the way to go. So if you can have the candidate, for example, doing a coding exercise that is working with the exact type of problem that they'll be working with in real life, that's really helpful. If you're hiring a recruiter, for example, and you have them evaluate resumes in front of you and tell you why they're evaluating the resumes the way that they are for the specific role that they're interviewing for, that is really, really helpful. If you have a sales candidate, sell you your product and do an intro sales call for you or something like that. Like, I think the more practical you get in your interview process, the more likely you will be to find the exact type of hire that you're looking for.
So there's a lot of talk about recruiting and rec ops being an art and a science. So I'll talk about both. But before I do, rec ops pop quiz. What is the difference between a candidate and an applicant? I'll let you chew on that. So I'm going to talk first about sourcing and then about inbound. So from a sourcing perspective, to answer this question, LLMs allow us to research faster. One of my favorite parts about recruiting is doing research and identifying candidate market fit for early stage companies. LLMs allow us to get that insight about a candidate package right in 200 characters when you're using some sort of sourcing tool. That's exciting. Why? Because that means recruiters are going to have an opportunity to research faster, work more recs, consult with more hiring managers, and that means they're getting more at bats to fill recs and become better at recruiting. That's a good thing. Then let's talk about inbound. All right, this is actually not a science part. This is more an art side. What do I do to filter out candidates efficiently when there's 5,000 folks applying to a rec? I bet you know the answer. Job application questions. It's all about injecting friction into the top of funnel. We have to remember, recruiters, we asked for this. This is a problem of our own making. 5 years ago, we went to the vendor landscape and said, hey, make it easier for folks to apply. And now we're like, whoa, 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 not like that. So what do? Add in job application questions. It can be a great way to glean some insights. And you'll tell really quick when you filter on the back end from a rec ops perspective to get your shortlist, but then you'll be able to glean more insights from those applicants on who's actually a thoughtful candidate, who's qualified and interested, that you're ready to screen and put in front of a hiring manager. If people are putting in those open text fields, look at my resume, well, we all know that's not going to cut it.
Nice. Yeah. So interesting to hear all the different ways that you're going about that. And I'm glad we got to John's question as well. We have some other questions, but I think I'll save them for, oh wait, we had one that was related actually. Alex asked, I think this was for you, Arielle, if the Boolean searches that you're doing are in the ATS or when you're passive sourcing.
Actually, yeah,
But-
I use it both ways.
Great. An easy answer. Okay, so the next question that we have is, I think this is our last one before the live questions, is about sourcing. So what's the best for each of you? What is the best tool for sourcing and outreach that you're using right now? And this question comes from David.
Well, as a sourcer, It goes in several directions. Like I mentioned, I think it just depends on the type of roles that I'm working on. Sometimes your best tool is your network, quite literally. I like to stay engaged with LinkedIn groups. I work in the creative field, so I also go on Facebook groups, for example, like Women in Film or sort of groups of that nature, and I'll stay in conversation just generally as a participant. That way, when I am looking for a very specific role, people are familiar with my face and my voice, at least on the internet, and they're like, wait a minute, she's a trusted source. I've seen her in this chat before. Let me reach out and let her know I'm interested, or maybe they know somebody and can reference. But obviously systems like Wellfound, I've used Hire Easy, I've used Lever, like anything like that to sort of help narrow down the search. And also I find I do use LinkedIn Recruiter as well. I feel like that's kind of like everybody's sort of go-to, but I found that actually emailing, I think I get better responses. So back to the drip campaigns that I was telling you guys about, those are generally via email. I think on LinkedIn you can only do 2 messages, which is fine, but I'm going to email you 6 times until you respond to me and at least tell me you're not interested. So I think those have been, yeah, my best methods.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Wellfound's AI functionality. They have automation that just delivers great candidates at the top of funnel, from finding engaging from millions of AI enriched profiles. Amit, the CEO of Wellfound, is awesome. He's scrappy. He's a sleuth himself. He's got a great backstory when it comes to just his experience as an engineer in tech. Super interesting CEO. I love working with those types of people and finding vendor partners that are focused on relationships. There's a lot of AI sourcing tools out there. The ones that are going to win are the ones that have great data. And what Wellfound allows you to do as a sourcer is have more first party data. What is the difference between first party data and third party data? Well, a lot of AI sourcing tools scrape from the open web or they leverage a third party data provider. Many of these are offshore. Many of these are assuming the risk of scraping LinkedIn or violating LinkedIn's terms and conditions to get this first party data and enrich profiles. That means a lot of the vendors out there, their margin, their profitability is squeezed by whatever it costs to access that data. Now, when you think about first party data, that's opt-in. I've used AngelList and Wellfound for the last 8 years, hiring software engineers in tech. And I'm excited because it has the candidate portal and the candidate side, Wellfound AI applicants, where you can go on and say, hey, I trust this platform. Here is my data. I'm Brandon. Here's my resume. I want to work at tech startups. So the companies that will win in this AI sourcing race are the ones that have first party data. Last thing I'll say is I've used Wellfound for searches. I used Wellfound at TLDR, one of the largest tech newsletters in the world, to fill pipelines quickly. What does it take to build a pipeline? 2 weeks. If you're recruiting and you can't go 0 to 1 with a rec sourcing and fill a pipeline and get interviews on your founder's calendar, like, you need to find a different profession. Wellfound allowed me to scale myself, keep OpEx low, and we maximized revenue per employee at TLDR, a bootstrap startup that did 10 million in revenue with 15 employees by the time I left. So definitely check out Wellfound. Definitely call Amit. Shout out to the team. Love all of y'all.
Well, thanks, Brandon. That was a great plug. And I'll talk a little bit about Wellfound AI and how you guys can get some access to that too. But Gloria, if you have anything else you want to share about your sourcing strategies, don't have to talk about Wellfound only. That's totally fine. Thanks so much, Brandon.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is evergreen. This is something that I am using constantly. I don't think everyone needs to use LinkedIn, and I do think that actually LinkedIn is going to be pricing itself out of a lot of people's like sourcing stack after a certain point because it is very expensive, especially for early stage startups. That said, I think what also works is like if you don't have a LinkedIn recruiting seat, is actually like posting onto your LinkedIn and letting your network know that you are trying to fill a specific type of role. That is something that is always helpful, something that I've always noticed. Tools that I do like, I've made hires from Wellfound. I've made hires from Bookface, which is like the Y Combinator kind of platform that allows you to search through people that are looking for early stage startups. Bookface is pretty great too. Contact Out and Seek Out again are both really, really good platforms. Seek Out in particular is really, really nice for sourcing and can help you like really, really narrow down specifically what you're looking for. And both Contact Out and Seek Out will allow you to do email outreach. Again, Juicebox is like up and coming, but is doing a lot of really, really cool stuff as well. And then honestly, like I think making sure that everyone at your company knows the roles that you are hiring for, having a really, really good referral program has always been really, really solid for me. At a startup that I was working at a few years ago, I actually implemented a referral policy that said you don't need to have worked with this person in the past to be able to refer them, but you do need to have had a conversation and have kind of sold them the company. And so that made everyone into like a mini recruiter at the company, where if they were out at a party and they were talking to an engineer and knew that we were hiring that type of engineer, they would just talk up the company, bring them in, and then they might get a referral bonus out of it. So I think internal referrals are really, really great. I think it's great to tell people within your network. Like a lot of my friends personally have sent me candidates because they know that I was hiring for a sales job, a marketing position, a product manager. They know specifically what it is that I'm looking for. And if they have friends that happen to be looking, they're just like, oh, Gloria's looking for that. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think relying on your internal network and your external network as much as possible, I think is a really good way to get hires pretty quickly too.
Oh yeah, I love that. And I've heard from so many recruiters doing Ask a Recruiter calls that like referrals sort of always lead to some sort of interview or real tangible screening. So it's a great tip for candidates as well, if there's any candidates on the call to be pursuing those. And it's really wonderful to hear it highlighted. So now this is my favorite part of all these calls, is when we get to hear more from the people who have joined us in the audience. So we have some time for live questions, which I'm thrilled about. If you have a question you want to ask it out loud, please use the hand raise tool if you haven't written it into the chat. I'm just going to quickly review. I've got my whole window up so I can see everyone. I'm going to quickly review any questions I might have missed already. Let me see. We had a lot of really good chatter about the AI bad actors that aren't exactly job questions, but well, Bushra asked, can AI judge behaviors? We need human for that, but I think that might be a rhetorical question. But if anyone wants to speak to that, you can. And the next question I had was from Jose, which was about how do you evaluate career pivoters? So if anyone has an answer to that question, I think it's an interesting one. I think it's one that's happening a lot right now with maybe, all of you have talked about how the people who will stay in recruiting will be the ones who really have this passion and care for it when other people are going to pivot. And I think people are pivoting in this moment of big job changes. So yeah, how do you evaluate those?
I've always really liked career pivoters because they bring kind of a broader range of skills to the position when they ultimately end up getting hired. It does very greatly depend on your hiring manager, and it depends on the role. So I, for example, have hired a chef as a software engineer, but that was something that I was able to do when I was at Google, and we had like unlimited interviewing resources, and that was something we were able to work on. It was a self-taught chef, and that is not something that I would be able to do at my current company. However, I think at my current company, I would be able to move someone from a semi-tangential role. Like if someone was moving from a customer success position into like an account management position, there's a lot of overlap there. And that is something that I think my hiring managers would take into consideration when we're talking about how the person would be able to do in the role. Again, I think having practical interviews and practical ways of evaluating the candidates, would this customer success person be able to manage a client in the same way that they manage customers? let's see, let's ask them to like show us practically. And, maybe there's a certain amount of training that we're willing to do in the job, but if we can see that they have the basic foundation that we need for this role, then that's something that we're usually okay with. So it depends on the role, and it also depends on, I think, your company's resources. If you have a lot of interviewers, if you have a lot of people that are able to do some training on the job, I think then you usually can be a little bit more open to interviewing candidates from different backgrounds.
Awesome. Oh, Brandon, did you have a thought on that too? Go for it. If you did.
On pivoters,
Oh, I
I
saw
haven't
your
hired
mic.
any pivoters in the last few years.
No, that's cool. I saw your mic go off, so I thought you were getting ready to say something. That's all good. I think that was a really good answer and kind of encouraging for people who are looking to pivot in their roles. I see James has his hand up, so I'm gonna prioritize people who want to speak out loud. James, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. First of all, John actually responded, but I'll ask again. So I'm a fresh recruiter, and a lot of the hiring managers have been mentioning cultural fit as a reason that they didn't hire someone, but there's been a strong pattern with demographic. So, in this current political climate, how do you navigate that conversation and how often does it happen?
I can jump on this one because I actually just recently had a similar situation with my hiring managers. The way that I would pivot around that, so everything is kosher between myself and, my hiring managers, my partners, is like, I need tangible feedback. So you're going to need to submit the feedback form for every candidate that you've talked to. And then let's narrow down, okay, what is actually going on here? Is it actually a cultural fit? Like, are you nitpicking at their background? Like, just so everything is in writing and we can
Okay,
really see
awesome.
what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you.
One other thing that I have done in the past is really, really track my data. This is where like data can be really
Mm,
critical. You are noticing that there's a culture fit and it's always a specific type of candidate. You might notice that because you're seeing this feedback come in, but it's going to feel anecdotal if you're just saying this. But if you can go back
mm,
and pull the data and it's like, hey, unfortunately, it looks like women are not a culture fit 90% of the time. So, like, we need to figure out a way to address that because, if we end up doing an internal audit, that's going to be a big problem for the company. So, being able to have that data to back up what you are seeing. Also, it might help that, sometimes you might notice that you might feel like there's a certain type of person or a certain person that's someone coming from a specific type of background that is always being rejected for being a culture fit. And you might think that you're seeing a pattern, but then you go and look at the data and it turns out it's actually not a pattern. You're just seeing it.
mhm,
You're more sensitive to a specific type of feedback that you're seeing. So it's good to just have the data that you're tracking regardless because the data doesn't lie.
mhm.
And if you have the data to be able to back you up, that is something that's going to be a lot easier to address.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. This is another good use case for interview transcription. So if a hiring manager says like, "Oh, this person wasn't a culture fit," well, the transcription says you spoke 80% of the time, hiring manager. How would you know that? So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Oh, really great, clear answers. Thank you each. And really important question. I have a question here from Masha. Masha, do you want to ask it out loud? Or maybe Masha's gone. It's still an interesting question. I'm going to read it out. She just asked, what are we thinking about video resumes? Or like, I guess like maybe some of the AI interview tools that are out there kind of overlap with that question.
A lot of my colleagues like video resumes, like from a recruiter standpoint, because it'll help narrow down things really quickly. But again, I think it depends. For me, my first thought is, I want to be the warm person. I want to talk to you. I want to be that first line of defense. So I would always rather have the conversation with them personally, even if it's, 10 minutes past the clock. Like I would just rather do it myself. And I think a lot of my coworkers feel the same. But also, I don't like when hiring managers want to do a video resume or a hire view for director, manager, any sort of leadership role, it just feels tacky and lazy and not my favorite. So I think it really depends on the type of role, but if I could get rid of them altogether, then I totally would.
Yeah, I don't think it works for engineers at all because people feel awkward in front of camera. So I really don't understand all this push towards like resume is dead, let's do video. I think it's not a good idea personally.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't have the attention span for a video resume. If I just have to watch a bunch of people just like little movies about their experience, I'm not going to be able to focus on that well enough as I am going to be able to focus with a conversation. So for me personally, I do appreciate being able to have those conversations as opposed to doing the video interviews or the video resumes. Also, like as someone who has done the one-sided video interviews in the past for jobs that I was interviewing for, it's very, very awkward if you're not used to it. Like if you're not used to seeing yourself on camera, if you're not in a role where you're having to speak in front of a camera all the time, it can be extremely uncomfortable, which is again why it's never going to work for engineers long term. That said, I do know some people who have told me that they actually really prefer video resumes. It's something that makes them feel comfortable. They feel awkward when, their initial conversation with someone, it just feels very high stakes to have that initial display of skills. Be a conversation with someone who might be having a bad day, might be having a good day. I don't know. And so I think it's fine to have it as an option for people if they want it. But I also think that probably like 85% of the time, people are going to choose a live interview over a video resume.
Candidates are going to do what it takes to get a job, and companies are going to do what it takes to keep cost per hire low. It's all about threading that needle.
Nice. And then John had a question about the H-1B changes. Do you want to ask it out loud, John?
Sure. I finally get to talk. I've been like talking with my hands the whole time. What did somebody say about big personalities? Data? Anyway, thank you. Yes, Rachel, I appreciate it. It's tangentially related. I guess it's going to be an ops thing if you have to like pay for it and you have a reduced candidate pool. But what does everyone think about this fresh off the press, H-1B update? Is it going to be worse for, America? Is it going to be worse for tech? Is it going to be, obviously probably is. I mean, where do we go? I mean, it's also new.
I actually
I'm going
just
to chat
asked
with my people here.
I just asked my leadership about this for talking points, and they're still trying to formulate what we will say to candidates. I mean, definitely from that tech perspective, I have a lot of candidates in process right now that are on H-1Bs, even with like approved I-140. So I don't know per se what that means. What do I think about it? I mean, at a high level, it's not my favorite situation. You don't wish that for any candidate. I think that there's a lot of amazing talent out there. And I love to get people in with visas. I think that it's giving somebody a chance, as it is with any candidate for any role. And I don't ever discredit them just because they have an H-1B visa situation. So unfortunately, if the prices do end up being that high, I don't know if business will be able to justify the cost. I think it was like 100,000 or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. TBD, honestly.
I think it is going to have a bigger impact on tech than most other industries. And I do think it's going to be overall a negative impact. I think a lot of like the new grads that we hire from, really like top schools tend to eventually need an H-1B visa. And so that's going to also impact their longevity. Do they stay in the US, through their OPT, or do they just decide, go home now and start to build a career there. So I think ultimately it is going to be hurting the US more than it is helping us. I think that there are going to be some companies that will continue to sponsor H-1B visas for candidates that they're really excited about, but I think it's going to be a little bit more harmful than we're expecting it to be.
I've got to jump in a second for a meeting not an employment attorney, but this is really just a supply and demand and cost of labor thing to consider. But yeah, wild times to be in recruiting, which is why we have to be resilient, adaptable, and informed.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Brandon. And yeah, that's a good reminder that I also need to wrap up because we're almost at the end of time. So before I say goodbye to everyone, and also, Brandon, if you have to go, just thank you all, Arielle, Gloria, Brandon, you've all been amazing, and I've learned so much from listening to you. I want to point out that WellFound does have an AI sourcing tool, and it has some inbound tools as well. I do encourage you to check it out. I actually have used it for outsourcing the speakers for the series, which has been really great. We have something called Smart Criteria, which is sort of like this great tool to infer things from a resume rather than having to have that exact Boolean search term to drive the results that you're getting. So like I was like, I need somebody who's done any public speaking before. I need somebody who has done a webinar or a podcast or what have you. And I ended up, and anyone who's come to these, I think will agree, I've had some really great speakers. So I'm speaking from a little bit of experience there. And it also includes an automated email sequence that allows you to email directly from your own email. So maybe Arielle might help you out with your email sequencing that you were talking about. So I encourage everybody to take a look at it. Alejandro is going to drop the link in the chat for how to use WellFound AI, and I'll also include it in our follow-up email with the recording to the session. If you want to revisit anything, you can also book a call with our team if you want like some hands-on help. We've got a great team who can help you with that. Two other things to sort of wrap things up. One is that you can join our Discord. We have a Discord community now. It's a lot of job seekers so far, but they would love to have some recruiters there if you want to like share any insights. But we also have a recruiter only channel if you want to talk to each other and continue this conversation about skill sharing. If Discord is your kind of place, please join us there. Alejandro put that in the chat as well. And then the last thing is that we do have a survey. So if you would fill out our survey, I would be really appreciative about it. I'm also going to include it in the follow-up email. This is a great opportunity to stay in touch. If you add your email into one of the questions, I'll keep you on the invite list for these sessions. But also, if you are interested in being a part of Ask a Recruiter, if you're a recruiter yourself and you'd be interested in speaking, feel free to say a little hello in the messages there, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. And also, I'm like very open to ideas. We've run 25 of these sessions now, which has been like kind of quite a lot. There's been 2 so far that have been for recruiters specifically, but I'm very excited to run more of these where we bring recruiters together. So this is a great way to stay in touch as well. And that is it. Sorry to keep you guys over for a couple minutes. Thank you so much for joining us, and please stay in touch with WellFound and each other. And thank you again, Arielle and Gloria and Brandon, who's now gone, but thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Nice to meet you. Ready to find your next role or discover top talent? Visit us at wellfound.com.